Okay, it's if you have your sound on. Okay, it is 6:03. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District meeting together to order. Linnell, can you do the roll call? She's on her way.
Here.
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 Here. Okay, if you would like to make a comment on a specific item not on today's KPPCSD special meeting agenda, please raise your hand and someone will bring you the mic. Or if you're attending virtually, please raise your hand via Zoom. Once you're called on, please state your name clearly for the audio recording. You're requested to address your comments to the president and the board of directors and not to staff and or the audience. Anyone in Zoom? And then we have 2 participants here in the room. And any comments or questions here in the room? And he'll bring the mic, or you can just talk. My apologies, I missed. Thank you. Okay, any comments or questions? About the agenda?
Okay. I don't know if I really need that. Okay. So thank you very much, David Aranda, for answering some of these questions before, I don't know where I'm supposed to stand with this thing. Before the meeting started, that was super helpful. And I'm just going to go the ones that we didn't discuss. I'm asking, to the budget. Is that what you're calling for now or no? Oh, she just called for comments. Okay.
Did you go through the way it's listed on the agenda item, please?
Okay. Pro tip, leave it on. No worries, no worries. Okay, so my first question that I didn't get to address yet is legal expenses. Why do you believe that the reduction that you're projecting is achievable, given that legal expenses are so far over budget already for fiscal year 23? I'm not expecting you to answer my questions in real time. I'm just putting this out there for your consideration as you prepare the budget. The next question is, Mr. Aranda said he has the answer, but I'm going to put it out here to remind him that I'm looking for this answer. Accounting and audits, it's similar to the legal question. You've got a greatly reduced budget, and I'm asking, does this seem achievable given that some of the numbers in your budget are unaudited because, you know, you're budgeting less than half of the fiscal year 23 actual year to date. Oh, this is a question. Police budget, community events within the police budget, $7,500, up 50%. I'm just curious what those are. Tennis court revenue. I have to preface my question with a huge thank you to the district for taking over collecting your own money for tennis court expenses. So that's awesome. That's starting July 1st. And I am just curious why you're anticipating a decline in the tennis court revenue, because I think that might not happen. It's a really small thing, but you know. And my last question is community center revenue versus other community center revenue. Could you please explain the difference between those two things? So it's listed both ways, twice. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. David,
I'll address a couple of the questions and let's try to go in the order you asked them. On our finances, how did we do a budget that is reduced from the year that we haven't seen all the financials yet? Is that right? Okay, so legal, accounting, and audit, we had huge expenses that were not normal, that were not part of a normal operating fiscal year. And I've said this, it's public record, I'll say it again. They were spending over $10,000 a month in regard to an outside source for financials, plus over $10,000 a month for inside of an employee. And we see that in discussing this with Eddie Bailey that's doing our work now. We see that being dramatically reduced because what did they say, Chief? About 90% of our issues have been resolved, I think is what they said. So we're expecting everything to settle down. And from the legal standpoint, I can't predict if we're going to have another lawsuit. I certainly hope we're not. But a lot of that legal expense was based on a lawsuit and an investigation. So that is not going to be part of our budget because that's not an assumption that I would take as something regularly happening. Does that answer the question then? Okay. Then the next.
Thank you. If you go back a number of years, you'll find that legal expenses were very high for quite a while. Then they dipped down with an occasional spike and then went back down again. And this is just another spike. Some years things happen that are outside of our control that we have to respond to. And that drives up the legal bills. Those matters are concluded. There were actually a couple of them that drove up the legal bills, but they're concluded now and there's no reason to foresee anything similar coming up.
Your second question was in regard to the financials that we have not yet seen. Right. So the chief and I have spent the last about 6 weeks on Zoom every week with Eddie Bailey, going through our current financial situation, what needed to be cleaned up. But the last 4 meetings we've had, maybe even 6, I don't remember, have been specific. There's a specific agenda item where we've been talking about the budget. So it's not just the chief's or mine. We worked on our numbers that we know about, but we asked for input from an outside source on expectations of expenses as well as revenue. So I feel very comfortable that those numbers are very legitimate. And I was going to say this during our regular meeting, I can repeat it, but we have over $3 million in cash and investments for the KPPCSD. That's just been confirmed by the company that's doing our work for us. And we are very well funded in regard to pension and health benefits. So things are looking very bright. I know that when I first got here, I was concerned, but things are looking very good. Was that an expense?
Community events. When I arrived a couple of years ago, we had requests for staffing things like the 5K run, the Christmas tree lighting, coffee with a cop, and a variety of community events, and we're getting more of those. Well, when we started allocating officers to attend these, like the school parade and things like that, I asked where the money was coming from, and everybody said, we never budgeted for it. That's what it's budgeted for. So.
In the park, we have, in the park fund, we have community center revenue budgeted at 50,000. And then other, where's the other community center revenue you're referring to? Oh, okay. So there isn't anything proposed. And I believe when we had that discussion, there was, yeah, you can see if you look on our budget for fiscal year 23, there was $456. And if you look at the actual for fiscal year 22, there was nothing. So it looks like for some reason, someone thought they would budget a certain amount of community center revenue to one line item and another amount to another. And the other one didn't amount to anything. So we said, why are we spinning our wheels with two line items for community center revenue? What I see is that number, chart of account number 439 being removed eventually. That was the adopted budget for 15,000. The reality is it wasn't ever there.
I would have to look back at previous budgets. It's possible that there was another line for donations because that 15,000 may have been what came from KCC, and that 456 might have been an estimate of the revenue that's still coming in from the sale of the Kensington note cards. So that's my thinking, but I'd have to look. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Any on Zoom? I don't see any. So let's move on to the first item of this special meeting agenda.
Declare the hearing closed. When there's no more verbal comments, you want to declare the hearing closed.
Thank you. It's my first hearing, I guess. Yes, so the hearing is closed.
And then we want board discussion if there's any.
Okay, any more discussion? You'll have. No. Okay, any board members, comments?
I have a question. Was the increase that we anticipated from Fernando originally included in this budget at 500 a month?
It was not, but I did put a little bit more in that because in what I noticed over the prior year is many times Fernando's asked to do extra work. So I'm hoping if we have storms like we did this past year, we're going to go over budget, but if we don't, we'll be fine.
Okay, thanks. So the increase he proposed is still to come in the numbers?
I was going to leave that number the way it was.
Got it.
The way it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other director questions or comments? None? Okay, so do we move on to the, okay, the hearing is closed. Can we move on to the adoption of the, I guess we move on to the resolution number 2023-10 or?
Then we want to go to number 2, to conduct a public hearing for the annual report of the Kensington Park
Yes.
Assessment District. And we would handle that the same way we just handled the other one.
Thank you. Okay, so we're having a hearing now on the annual report for the Kensington Park Assessment District levy for fiscal year 2024, July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024. Any comments from the public? Or questions?
And there were no written comments on this either. As noted by both, but they were both advertised in the paper as required.
Thank you. Zoom. Okay, any questions or comments from my fellow board members? Director Spath?
Yeah, the CPI that's used for the park assessment, is that the same basis CPI that's used for the special tax? I know special tax, which is on the agenda later, is for the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward CPI. And I was just wondering if that is the same CPI that's used for the levy.
I don't want to say yes for a certainty, but it's the same company performing both of those functions.
Right. Okay, I'll assume it is. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I will just respond that on page 1, at least what's listed as page 1 on the summary of assessment, it does say the San Francisco Bay Area CPI. And I think that is probably the same.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's the same.
Yeah.
In the other item, which we'll get to, it's
called-
I believe San Francisco, Oakland,
Yeah.
Hayward. CPI.
Yeah.
But-
That was changed at some point in time. They added Hayward to it possibly. So it may just be called different things.
Right, but I think you're right. I think it's the same. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay. So we can close this hearing, public hearing. Okay, now we can move on to the agenda item on approving and adopting resolution number 2023-10 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, casting the district's ballot for the Special District Risk Management Association SDRMA election.
So there are 7 individuals that sit on SDRMA's board. Special District Risk Management Authority is governed by those 7. They're a joint powers authority. And those 7 individuals come from either management or from elected officials from districts that belong to SDRMA. Every other year, there's an election. It's either 3 seats that are open or 4 seats rotating. This year, there are 3 seats open. 3 of the incumbents are running, plus 1 additional individual. My recommendation to the board is to vote, and we would properly mark the 3 incumbents, Robert Swan, Jesse Claypool, and Sandy Seifert Raffleson. That's my recommendation.
Excuse me, may I ask a question?
Yes.
We have to vote for 3 of the 4. It's 3. You have to pick 3 out of these 4.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Director Duggan?
I'm happy to go with David's recommendation since he is much more likely to know any of these individuals than I am.
Director Spath?
I did read the applications of all of them and I was impressed by all, but I think your recommendation is correct. The 3 incumbents are special district, smaller entities, if you will. And I think they would better represent our interests as well.
That was the concern that I had, that the individual that has turned in her application that is on the local agency formation commission in San Bernardino County, really her elected position is with a city. And that concerns us a little bit because we're really geared for independent special districts, not for cities.
Director Hussey?
What's your current role with SDRMA?
Director,
You're a director on the board as well.
yes.
Okay, so is that considered a conflict of interest?
Telling it like it is. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
I mean, I don't necessarily think so either. I think it's an informed opinion. I think it was important to maybe note that you do have another role here. I guess I wasn't sure that it was director.
It's
Council,
not me running.
correct. I don't know if council has anything to say.
Most of the conflict of interest laws deal with finances, and I suspect that the interim general manager does not have a financial stake in this election. There are questions about compatibility of offices, but I don't really think those are a factor here.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public on this? Okay. Do I hear a motion? Do we, or I guess, how would we phrase the resolution? Oh, yeah.
We would adopt, we would have to mark on the resolution.
Okay.
Adopt the resolution with the 3 recommended candidates marked.
Right. So
we
so
need-
the motion should be specific that we're
Yes.
going to check the 3 incumbents or list them by name.
Okay.
I'm willing to make the motion. I make a motion that the Kensington Board of Directors adopt resolution number 2023-10, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District approving the official 2023 election ballot for the Special District Risk Management Association Board of Directors, marking the following individuals, all 3 incumbents, Robert Swan, Jesse Claypool, and Sandy Seifert Raffleson.
I second. I think last month we said we could just do
By acclamation.
by acclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no objections, the resolution passes. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. This is approve adjusting the wording in previous MOUs between KPPCSD and the KPOA regarding holiday pay as required by CalPERS. David, do you want to give a little background here?
Yes. The board may recall a couple of months ago that we brought essentially exactly the same thing for the current MOU between the Police Officers Association and KPPCSD. CalPERS has specified that they want previous MOUs to have the same wording, which we don't quite get because those MOUs don't exist in use anymore. But with that said, we're asking the board to approve, and you'll notice in the recommendation the wording we're using here to try to make sure we get it right with CalPERS. And am I correct in saying, Chief, that we have a verbal approval from the president of the association? Yeah, so it's now the action of the board that will hopefully close the book on this issue with CalPERS and let us move along and avoid any fines.
Well, thanks for doing that research and figuring that out, David. I know you've been doing that over the last couple of months.
Well, the
And-
chief did the research on the MOUs, and I will say that thankfully Cindy at ID Bailey has a good working relationship with a number of people at CalPERS, and they're tickled to death now that someone's finally responding to them and getting the work done. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to approve adjusting the wording in the previous MOUs between KPPCSD and KPOA regarding holiday pay as required by CalPERS?
Well, yeah, I'll move that the board adjust the wording in the previous memorandum understandings between the Kensington Police Protection Community Service District and the Kensington Police Officers Association regarding holiday pay as required by CalPERS.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need to read out all the MOUs, the dates and?
Sorry. I really want to hear the motion. We're going to put it verbatim in the minutes, and that's why we worded it the way we did.
And if you could be sure to include that the manager is authorized to execute the amendment, so that there's no question of his authority to do so.
Well, okay, number 2.
Let's say,
Yeah. Right. Well, I'll read two then, because I already made number one as a motion. So the second motion is that the KPPCSD board authorizes the interim general manager to execute MOU amendments on behalf of the district, specific to amendments that conform the definition of holiday pay to CalPERS regulations to be incorporated in a side letter for the July 1st, 2014 to December 31st, 2017 MOU, to the January 1, 2018, December 31st, 2018 MOU, the January 1, 2019 to October 31st, 2019 MOU, the October 31st, 2019 to July 30th, 2021 MOU, and the August 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 MOU.
Seconded.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, David.
The motion passes. Okay. Next, we have on the agenda approving a resolution number 2023-11 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, approving applications for the per capita grant funds.
The beat goes on. As I have stated to the board, a number of years ago, the grant was submitted, the grant request for per capita funds of 180,000 was submitted to the state, but never followed through on. And what's happening is, as I keep asking for approval, a signed contract, they are piecemealing things back to me. And so what they realized is the resolution you're looking at was done by the board a few years ago, but there wasn't, they weren't happy with the wording of giving approval of the person in authority to the general manager. So they asked if we'd redo the resolution, and that's what you have before you. Just to finish the comment about the grant, a reminder, it is in the budget, still expecting the money. There are two remaining things that they are waiting for, three remaining things that they are waiting for us. One is a deed restriction on this property. Another is the signage that they're requiring, and I don't think the signage is going to hold up getting our money. And the third is the issue that they're asking about a CEQA approval or notice of exemption. And I was fortunate enough to have finally, after a number of sleuthing and looking and getting frustrated, got a hold of the county. Believe it or not, there was an older application where a CEQA exemption was done. I'm hoping that the state accepts that. I've sent it on to them.
Just a quick comment. There's a typo in the resolution in number 4, or the word all needs another L. And sorry, go ahead.
Say that again.
And number 4 in the resolution says certifies that all, but there's an L missing.
Certifies that all, oh, I see. Linnell can make a note of that and clean that up before we send it.
Yeah. And then I did have a general question. Once we satisfy these requirements, do you have any idea how soon the money would be transferred to the district, or?
Probably 90 days.
And then I also had a question on the 7A. Conducting active outreach to diverse populations, in particularly minority, low income and disabled populations and tribal communities, to increase awareness within those communities and the public generally about specific programs and opportunities. Is that saying that we're trying to increase awareness about our park or district or in those communities, or can you explain what that means?
Well, I can explain what it means, but it's really meaningless because the project's already done.
Yeah, that's true.
So normally when you're applying for the grant, you're also doing your outreach and you incorporate that in your documentation in the grant. I don't know. I didn't read all the material that was presented to the state originally on this project. But that doesn't seem to be an issue with the state.
Thank you.
Just a quick question on that too. Does that outreach just entail the community? Or it's not clear to me whether we're just talking about the community of Kensington or more broadly.
Typically, it's within your community that you've held some public meetings and attempted to reach all areas of your population.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this resolution?
I'll make a motion if I move that the board adopt resolution number 2023-11, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District approving application for the per capita grant funds.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So I believe that concludes no?
Number 6.
Oh. All right, I have it wasn't on my copy. Okay, thank you. Next we have approval of resolution number 2023-18 of the Kensington Police Protection District and Community Services District declaring the governing body members and volunteers shall be deemed to be employees of the district for the purpose of providing workers' compensation coverage for said certain individuals while providing their services.
So last week, we had an SDRMA risk control officer visit us and she did a full inspection. We'll get a full report probably in another few weeks from her. But something she brought to my attention that I did not catch was that for some reason, this district some years back elected to not cover their board of directors and workers' comp, which also includes volunteers. And as I think all of you know, the chief has started a very viable volunteer group. So this resolution will cover all of you 5 directors, if you get hurt on the job of serving on this board, and it will also cover any volunteer that might get injured. The cost is minimal. For the board of directors, it's a flat, I think it's about $75 for the year. For volunteers, it's calculated based on how many hours times minimum wage. So it's not going to have a huge impact, but it surely helps protect the district against costs that could be dramatic from a medical standpoint.
Any comments or questions on this? Okay, can I hear a motion? You have a question.
Well, my comment was, it says it's only $200 and I think it's a great idea. I can make a motion. I move that we approve resolution number 2023-18 of the Kensington Police Protection District and Community Services District, declaring that governing body members and volunteers shall be deemed to be employees of the district for the purpose of providing workers' compensation coverage for said in certain individuals while providing their services.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes.
May I ask a question? Really quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Does it impact the motion that our name for our district is incorrectly stated in the motion? It said Kensington Police Protection District and Community Services District.
District twice.
Yeah.
It's just how it was stated. I don't think it impacts the motion.
Where is it incorrect? I'm sorry.
It was just that Cass added the word district instead of
in the-
designating.
It's in the recommendation. It
Oh.
sounds like two districts, but if it's not in the motion, it's
Oh,
not in the
It's
motion.
not on the motion,
But I mean, it's in the motion, but it's not in the resolution.
right?
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Now I can close the special meeting. Thank you. Okay, so we are adjourned. It is 6:39. Let's take a 5-minute bio break. We'll be back. And we can't start till 7, right? So, but yeah, we'll see you all back at 7. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the KPPCSD to order and have our clerk conduct the roll call.
Here.
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 Here. Thank you. Okay, I just have a few comments. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you joining us. Here in the room, we've got 0 participants attending. We do have a special guest here, Chief Gankas, but it's an empty room here. And in Zoom, it looks like we've got, I will read the number of attendees. We've got 11 attendees. But I want to thank everyone attending via Zoom for taking time out of their busy schedule and joining us. I know we're heading into a really busy season with summer break for many families. We have another important and jam-packed agenda today. One of the biggest items on today's agenda is our budget for the new fiscal year. I want to give a special thanks to our interim GM, David Aranda, Chief Gankas, district staff, and our outside accounting firm, ID Bailey, for their hard work in getting this together. David and the chief have been working tirelessly on this, and David, your vacation can't come soon enough, I imagine. I also want to take a minute to acknowledge and give my deep gratitude to my fellow board members. All of you have stepped up to serve on various ad hoc committees and or undertake special assignments. Your dedication and commitment to serving and strengthening our community is remarkable, and I appreciate you. And I also want to express my appreciation to members of the community who have expressed support for our various committees and assignments, all the hard work this board has been doing. And I also recognize that many members of our community may have different opinions on some of the recommendations or different opinions on various issues facing us. And I think it's actually a really good thing that this community has so many engaged members, and this is what makes us a strong community. So I want to thank you all for your engagement, your questions, your comments. It's all strengthening the community. So at this time, let's turn to public comment. If you would like to make a comment on a specific item not on today's KPPCSD regular meeting agenda, please raise your hand via Zoom, since there's no one in the room. Once you're called on, please state your name clearly for the audio recording. You are requested to address your comments to the president and the board of directors and not to staff and or the audience. So let's go to Zoom. Let's see if there's any comments. And as a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll be keeping track of time. No. I don't see any hands, so. Okay. Great. Okay, so then seeing no hands, let's move on. Next is the police chief report.
Good morning, good evening, members of the board, General Manager Aranda, guests, and the community. My police chief's report has been submitted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and then I have a few comments and some updates when you're done. All right. How about that? All right. Any questions on the monthly report?
I
Okay,
have none. Thank you for that.
I'm happy to report everything is good with the police department. I'll give you 2 updates. A very astute Sergeant Amit Nath filed for a grant, and we were awarded $90,000 that we're going to put towards infrastructure and overtime. And we received another grant for $15,000 for police officer mental health awareness. You'll get the paperwork to approve that next month.
Congratulations. That's excellent work.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing no questions from the board on the police report. We'll move on to the general manager's report.
Again, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you,
based
Chief
on my
Yankas.
General manager's report.
I have none. Any questions from my fellow board members? Great.
Um,
Oh, Director Goff.
Just want to know, what's the main sticking point with the county regarding us acting as a treasury? Isn't there some,
I'm sorry, say that again.
aren't you having some difficulty with the county about us assuming our treasury responsibilities? What seems to be the main issue?
Well, we just had that discussion on Zoom yesterday with Heidi Bailey because I was concerned that it seemed like we were going in circles with them. So she called the treasurer and basically came to the same conclusion. So we're going to have a joint meeting with a couple of parties to clarify that moving our money out of the county and the county no longer being the treasurer for us is the best thing to do. And it's not critical right now. It does hold us up in some ways, but it's not critical because of our ability to still pull money out of the county and put it in Five Star Bank and still fund our payroll and fund our accounts payables. But we do want some clarification that we haven't gotten yet on certain aspects that we've been told that don't make sense to us about it's not about property tax revenues coming in. They're trying to say that we belong to the teeter plan, which means they fund in full and then they backfill late payments. They're saying that if we leave the treasury, the teeter plan doesn't apply. And I've never heard of such a thing before. And then the other aspect is that we draw, the way they allow us to do it right now is we draw off of property tax money. They're saying that they'll pay us on a quarterly basis for property tax money. Once again, I've never heard of a county doing that. So we're trying to get clarification on that.
Any other?
I'm sorry, but I'll make one other comment. In the KCC report, I do want to mention that because you heard someone from KCC mention we're not going to take over tennis court reservations right away on July 1st. There's still some work that needs to be done to make sure that's done right. So I've talked to Jenny Parks and I've also talked to Rosa, and they're going to get together and go into a transition on that.
Yes, Director Duggan.
I just want to make a comment on that, that I would really like to see that happening ASAP, because currently having to drop off a check at the KSEP office into the mailbox if you want to use the tennis court. I'm sure we're not collecting half the revenue we could. And I'm sure we're also having people fail to be able to use our tennis court. So that's.
I agree, but at the same time, I don't want two different people showing up to play tennis that got double booked and getting into a difficulty and us being in trouble.
This was also Jenny's recommendation based on, the transfer, and she doesn't want to transfer a bad system. She wants to transfer a good system when we get that system. And just for your benefit, the courts are only able to be reserved on weekends, and there are currently only two parties that reserve regularly. So there's not, and then the amount of money we collect is still pretty low. We have to look at a comparison of rates with other jurisdictions, but I've been also wanting this for a long time. So I'm confident it's going to happen over the next few months, and it's good that everyone wants to do it right.
Well, I'm assuming we are still also subject to having to take checks at the moment. So
We just got, I understand, the ability to collect credit card stuff. And then we also need to be looking, as Jenny pointed out, that gets us into the 20th century. Now we need to do Venmo and PayPal and who knows what else. But yes, we do take checks, and we now can take credit. And that's an important step in getting an online reservation system. So
do Do we have a credit card now? I know it's in you're saying we're working with Five Star Bank to get a credit card. But
We're set up, but we're not going to start. We made the decision that we don't want to start dealing with credit cards until this fiscal year comes to an end, just so we don't have hang up somewhere that hang up the close of the fiscal year. So July 1st, we'll start taking credit cards. And I've asked Rosa to contact Stallion Springs to look at a software program that they use for booking everything, not just tennis court, but this place, everything on a software program that takes away some of the human error factor.
Are you also then contemplating using, as Sylvia had suggested, PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, and all these different
We may, and I'll be having conversations as we keep on moving forward with the bank and how we set things like that up. I don't want to rock the boat too much considering some of our financial issues we've had previously.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the general manager's report? Hearing none, let's move on to director comments. Oh, excuse me, thank you. Okay. Sylvia, you can unmute yourself.
Hi. Just wanted to specify that KCC and Jenny are absolutely happy to perform this service as far as serving the community goes, but I have a liability concern about it. And that's why I've been pushing it, because I feel like if we're serving as a pass-through, we're taking people's money. If they get injured, they're going to name us in a suit. So I just wanted to specify that it's not that we don't want to keep serving the community in this way, but we feel that it exposes us to a certain level of liability to do so, because they aren't our tennis courts, they're yours. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sylvia. Any other comments or questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to director comments. Director Duggan.
I am scheduled to go ahead and give my report on the long-term legal protection of Kensington Park at this time. Any other directors want to make any director comments first?
Let me just make a comment on my involvement with the Fire Board's Emergency Preparedness Committee. There is one item I think that is important to us as well. There is an interest in looking at acquiring these what are called long-range acoustical devices, which would provide sirens and verbal communication to residents during different events, such as wildfire, but as important, earthquake, that would both advise them if after understanding what a siren means, or sound means, whether you should evacuate, for example, or if an earthquake occurs, a verbal message indicating that you shouldn't maybe use this street or that street because of the danger from falling telephone poles and wires and so forth. So there is an interest on the Fire Board side to look at potential of acquiring these, and there will be a presentation possibly in August to the Fire Board on these systems with the possibility of going out with a request for proposals for determining how many you might need in Kensington and what the projected cost would be. One of the important elements as far as cost is concerned is that FEMA may provide 75% cost for something like that. They did that in Paradise, the city of Paradise, or the town of Paradise, I should say, which has installed 21 of these devices, principally for wildfire evacuation purposes. The reason I mention that is that this district and the police department are responsible for evacuation. And so we would play an important role in how these are used and what the messaging should be in concert with the fire chief in El Cerrito.
Thank you. I would ask that if that's the case, that our, police department is included in that conversation and that discussion and as in the evaluation of whether those systems are the best use of the funds.
That's correct. I agree with you. And I was going to ask the chief tonight, but I will then. I know Lieutenant Harms is retiring and he was essentially serving as a liaison to that committee. And you may recall he was instrumental in the first evacuation drill that was undertaken here in Kensington. And so I think it's important not only for me to be involved, but I think it's also important to have an officer replace Lieutenant Harms in that capacity that you mentioned, Sylvia, on an ongoing basis, because there's a lot of interest in having another evacuation drill as an example. And there needs to be a lot more work in evacuation activities with regard to wildfire in particular.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Spath. Director Duggan.
I strongly support an LRAD system here. I think it's a great idea and I would love to see us move ahead with that as fast as possible.
Okay, great. Director Duggan.
So I will now give my report on the long-term legal protection of Kensington Park. In January of this year, President Aquino Fike gave me the assignment of researching ways to legally limit the future use of Kensington Park to recreation only. Voters in the November election came out strongly in favor of keeping all of our park a park in perpetuity. Unlike surrounding communities, we have only one park. It's beautiful, well-used, and it's one of Kensington's most valuable assets. Having a gorgeous park attached to our children's school is priceless. It teaches our children about nature and provides a large variety of recreation options to keep Kensington citizens and families healthy. Ensuring that future Kensington leaders don't pave paradise and urbanize this irreplaceable asset is intelligent city planning and responsible fiscal management. With the help of General Counsel Ann Danforth, GM David Aranda, and some kind citizens, I found several potential ways of legally protecting the park. However, before we get into actions that the KPPCSD board could take, I have some good news. A grant, which we were mentioning a little while ago, that we will hopefully soon receive, will help in protecting the park. David Aranda is finalizing paperwork to receive a grant of $180,000 for the recent renovation of our community center. One requirement is that the deed for the parcel that the community center is on must be restricted to park and recreation purposes only till the year 2048. This parcel includes the parking lot below. So meeting the requirements for this large grant will protect at least part of our park for 50 years. That's what we call gravy. Onward to actions the board could take. We could pass an ordinance. The language of this ordinance should be carefully chosen. Do we wish to state that the park, quote, must be used for recreation only, unquote? But that could restrict the possible future use of the annex building in the park for KPPCSD administration staff, which might be a useful option. So perhaps it should say, quote, limit the use of the park to recreation and KPPCSD administrative functions only. After the ordinance is written, there are two options for getting it passed. One, the board introduces the ordinance and after a public hearing, votes to pass first reading. At least 5 days later, the board holds a second reading of the ordinance and passes it by majority vote. The ordinance then takes effect in 30 days unless challenged by a referendum petition, which would have to be signed by 10% of registered voters, which in Kensington would equal about 435 voters. So the pros of using this process is relatively quick and inexpensive. The cons: future legislative bodies can amend or repeal the ordinance, so it may not satisfy those who want a relatively permanent regulation. Option 2. Alternatively, the initiative process could be used to pass an ordinance. This begins with creating a citizens petition, which 10% of registered voters must sign. Once again, that's 435 voters. The signatures are submitted to the district elections officer, who certifies the results to the board of directors. The board can then just adopt the proposed ordinance if it so chooses. Let's call that option 2A. In option 2B, if the board wants to take it a step further, the board can submit the ordinance to the voters at the district's next regular election. If the citizens vote yes, the ordinance goes into effect 10 days after the election is certified. Option 2B seems to me to be unnecessarily complicated and costly. 2A achieves the same purpose quickly without having to go through an election. Pros of going through the initiative process: the ordinance can only be changed or repealed by another public vote. This makes it a more permanent regulation. Cons: if we decide to put it on the ballot, which is not necessary, there is a fee. As you can see, an ordinance would be easy to put into place, either simply by a board vote or using the initiative process. Lastly, I'd like to thank Ciara Wood for speaking to a county official about the option of rezoning the park. However, this proved to be a legal dead end. So basically that would not restrict the use of the park, or, it would only exclude private residents or private commercial uses. So that was a dead end. There you have our options for legally protecting our lovely park. I'll do my best to answer any questions, and please help me. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Director Duggan and Ann, for your work on this. And it sounds tricky, but it seems like we do have a few options. And I was just curious if you had any other comments on this issue, or anything else to add to Director Duggan's.
I just think that the devil will be in the details and getting the wording just so, but I'm sure we can do that.
Director Goff?
Is there, I'm sure there must be some guidance on how you define recreation for these purposes.
That would be one of the details.
One of the details.
Oh, yes.
So,
Want to be explicit about what is included and be sure to rule out anything that you don't want.
right. So in terms of if, let's just say we wanted to invite a small business to offer food and drinks or something like that in one of our facilities, or, something, that's done. For the purposes of enjoying the park and recreating, is that something typically you hear about as?
I think that we could make that fairly clear. There is often language, of such accessory uses as are commonly associated with the park. If somebody came in to sell hot dogs and lemonade at a stand, I think you could find a way to phrase it so that would be allowed.
Right.
Director Hussai?
I have a question about the restriction on the deed, which it just came to me I've heard this 3 or 4 times, but it just came to me that, the parking lot's included, and that parking lot is used for a lot of things that are not park and recreation. The church parks there, that's a private religious use. Private parties use it for parking. The library uses it for parking. I guess it's okay, but again, the details, like what is, that is definitely, I think the issue of the church using that parking lot is not necessarily a park and recreation use.
Yeah, that's true. My the deed restriction is with the purpose of not changing the use of the community center. I think if someone wanted to make an issue of the parking lot not being recreational, I don't know how you can say a parking lot that's existed is recreational to begin with, but we're not doing anything. The deed restriction is primarily because of the work that was done in this building.
Got it. Thank you.
I will and intend to dig a little deeper into what needs to happen on the deed restriction and how that would come about. However, I believe that the church's portion of the parking lot is on a separate parcel. And as long as it's only incidental use, I don't think it would violate the intention of the restriction we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, let's chat further, Anne, about what work needs to be done. I think I know a lot of work has already been done, so
I have a quick question.
Director Spath.
How many parcels does the park make up? I know 3. And what are they?
The parcel that goes basically vertically
Right.
just behind us through the parking lot to Arlington. The parcel that takes in the majority of the park activities, which is a little strange because there's a cutout behind the amphitheater and then it circles around and takes in most of the basketball court and the grassy area. And then the third parcel is basically if you're standing on Arlington looking up on the hill, that parcel.
Any other questions or comments on Director Duggan's report?
I have one comment, which is that the parcel that is the hillside, which of course has been discussed before. I have sort of 2 thoughts about that. One, I'm always wary about restricting future boards. And the park as it is developed is under very little threat. The hillside is also a difficult site. But what stuck in my mind, this was kind of a surprise to me, is one time I was speaking with John Sullivan, who was one of the original folks who helped get the park and a big believer in the park and, all for don't touch the park, don't build on the hillside, all of that. But once he said to me, if the county wanted to build a bigger library and wanted to use that land, now that I would be for. And so I do urge us to think, proactively in the future, there could be a very positive use. And I suppose then the next board, if they agreed with that, would just change it. But it just creates another barrier to something that could be, viewed positively. So that's one thought. My other thought about the park, my biggest exhortation to the community and to my fellow board members for consideration is that the best way to protect the park is to adequately fund it. It hasn't been adequately funded almost since it was actually conceived, because that was partly how it got passed. People were very nervous about asking voters to pass, to take on too much. And up until about, 2 years ago, we were paying each $130, I believe, for the park bond. And so I am dedicating myself to, working with the community and the board to get the resources we need. And I would urge us to also think about that when we look at these options and mobilizing the community. I think the best protection we can give is to adequately fund it so that we can adequately take care of it.
Let me just
Director Spath.
quickly, and I would wholeheartedly agree with Sylvia that it is underfunded, as evidenced by the budget, where there's a significant amount of general fund money that is moved to maintain the park. And I don't think that's sustainable in the long term. So I do think we need to start looking at funding options and think about something creative. I know there's some mention of community facilities district in the discussion about the planting. And I think that's something we should take a look at as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I would add, I think we need both. I think we do need a legal protection to ensure that we don't have unwanted or unintended uses of this gem of a space. But I also know that it does need work and it needs investment. And so we need to also bring up how we support the park financially, bring it up to speed and bring it into the 21st century. So I also think we need to have much deeper analysis and conversation about each parcel. I have a lot of questions about the various parcels. I've looked at them on the map with you, David, but yeah, I have a lot of questions. And so I think that's probably for another meeting or for ongoing work. But thank you, Director Duggan, and thank you, Anne. Any question? Yeah, Director Goff.
Right, one last question. I just want to, were we able to definitively identify a recent survey of the entire park? Because wasn't of all three parcels essentially, because there was some question about.
I'm not aware of a survey that entailed all three parcels. There's the survey that did this because of the look at the parking lot for other reasons. So I'm not aware of that. And maybe there's been studies done on the parcels and the buildings that sit on the parcels, but I haven't seen any survey maps.
The survey I sent for Bay Area Land Survey, was that all parcels?
I don't remember. I don't remember seeing them, but they might be. I was probably paying more attention to
This parcel.
facilities than I was the survey.
I would just look for that one more time because we did do some comprehensive surveys. I thought it did the whole park because there was also an issue on the boundary. Just check that.
Yeah, because it's obviously an issue not only for the legal protection, but the trees that were disputed in question by the school and obviously anything, obviously. So.
Great. I see one hand in the audience, two hands. One first, Mabry, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I just want to say that I know there's, excuse me, there's been a lot of dismissal of the possibility of putting those modular buildings on only a part of the parking lot. Frankly, I don't really consider the parking lot area an integral part of the park. It's nice to have there. And I'm just going to also say, I don't feel that we as a public are obliged to provide parking for the church. That is just not a reason for us not to use it to the benefit of the whole community. But
Mabry,
what?
Mabry, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just looking for comments on Director Duggan's report. Do you have a comment or question on that?
Yes, it's about what Sylvia was saying, protecting the park. And I don't think that the parking lot needs any special protection. And for the reasons I just gave, it could be used to house the modules. There was a plan and it left the major part of the parking lot. It's the funding issue that's the major problem there. I'm sorry that you just think that the parking lot, I don't consider that part of the park that needs special protection.
I think this is that, unfortunately, I don't think that comment is directly related to Director Duggan's report. So I'm gonna.
Yes, it is, because I don't think the parking lot is a part of the park that needs protecting.
If I could clarify, perhaps for Mabry, I'm not sure that Mabry, you caught the earlier part of the meeting, and the reference in the beginning of the report is that we are applying for a grant for $180,000 that will help with the construction of the community center. We're actually wrapping up a application that has been in the works for a couple of years. And as part of that application, we have to put the deed for the property that the community center sits on, guarantee that it will only be used for parks and recreation until the year 2048. And so that grant stipulation, which includes the community center parcel, includes the full parcel, which now takes in that parking lot. So the fact of the matter is that we will be sacrificing that option when we accept that grant. And that's a choice that we have made as a community, as a board. Actually, a previous board applied for this grant. I don't remember that particular provision. Clearly, it was not followed through on a staff level after the board voted to go forward on the application, but I would agree that it's.
So that the parking lot is actually included in that parcel. It's not its own separate parcel.
That is correct.
Okay, well, sorry to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next we have Gail Feldman. Gail, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to really echo Director Hasai's comments her previous comments in regards to really not in the future completely binding future boards or future people in the community to something that would limit some flexibility. I don't see ever an interest in the community to change the purpose of the park as it is now, although there have been some issues raised about certain areas of the park that are considered park property that could be maybe put to different purposes, whether it was the expansion of a library or some other use. So I guess in regards to the report, I just hope that you select a method that is giving your board and future boards any options for making changes as needed to reflect what the community priorities are at that time. And again, the main key point is that the park really has never been in danger other than the fact that it has never had adequate funding for maintenance. And your board does really need to address that, because just looking at your budget that you just held your hearing on, there's really not enough money coming into the park from park resources. And so you're using general funds to pay for maintenance of the park. And so I think you have to come back to the community at some point and share that and make, a decision about how you're going to allocate resources to the park. But to me, that is really the thing. If you want to protect the park, then you need to figure out how you can fund it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate your comments. I would disagree, though, that the park was never in danger. I think the last election showed that there was great concern and that there were various, issues that being publicly discussed about what I consider, inappropriate uses of the park. So I do think we need a legal method to ensure that the park is really restricted to recreational uses. Whether we open up some parts of the parcel for other more flexible uses, I think this board needs further discussion. Here, Director Duggan.
A few comments. The expansion of the library is still a recreational purpose, so that would not be blocked in any way. In the future, an initiative only requires 435 signatures. 435 citizens could start another initiative process. A future board could easily do that and overturn our ordinance. So it's not impossible. And I just want to mention that there are community members who are trying to create a nonprofit at present, which would allow other community members to make donations, which would be tax deductible to the park, which could then be used for fixing up the park. So that is one idea that we will be sharing more about in the report on the park.
We're able to take donations anytime, so there's no need for another group. We're happy to take them.
But they're not tax deductible.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
No, David said no.
Well, we've been saying they are for years, and Ann just confirmed that to me tonight. We're a governmental organization, but we can take tax deductible. All right, well, you guys can argue about that.
Okay, we need to get to the bottom of that issue, but we need to move on. I see another hand, Sylvia, and then Linnell, can you remove folks after they finish their comments as panelists? Thank you. Sylvia, you can unmute yourself.
I need to identify which Sylvia.
Sylvia Rosales-Fike. Sylvia Rosales-Fike, you can unmute yourself.
Got it. Thank you. Yes, I really applaud this effort and research that Director Duggan has done recently. And I do want to remind our community that our park has been endangered, not just from the recent events of trying to install the police department in the park premises. If you all remember, our community voted to keep the park after an attempt in the early 90s, mid 90s, of selling when the school district owned the land, they were already talking with developers to turn the entire premises into more housing. So there have been attempts, and there will be in the future. We never know what ideas could come to play. And that's why it's important that our park is preserved, not just until 1940s, 2040s, but in perpetuity. We need to define what recreation, what allowances could be included, how the parking lot could be treated or not. But what we need to make sure is that in the future, we don't have to fight again for the right of our families to have a park, open space, and recreation. Every community has one. The state of California has an entire regulation that protects parks and open space in the state. So we need to have this, and I appreciate the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Sorensen, I'm not sure if you have a comment or question. If you do, you can unmute yourself.
Her hand wasn't up.
Yeah, she was put as a panelist. I'm seeing. Okay, on my screen, she's shown as a panelist. Okay, so I put her hands. Sylvia, please mute yourself. Or Linnell, can you mute her? Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, let's move on. We've barely begun this agenda. Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. On this month's consent calendar, we have the minutes for the special joint meeting held in April. I understand the minutes for the special and the regular KPPCSD board meetings in May will be provided for board approval at the July 13th board meeting. That's correct, David?
Yes.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to ask if anyone from the board or if our GM wishes to pull anything from the consent calendar? Or the one thing? Okay, great. So then I'd like to make a motion to approve the item on this month's consent calendar, approving the minutes for the special joint meeting.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. All right, next, let's go on to ratifying the May 2023 bills. Any comments or questions, or David, you look like,
That was part of the consent.
oh,
That's all.
excuse me. So then should we amend the motion and to include? Okay. Great. So I'd like to amend the motion that we're approving for this month's consent calendar, the minutes for the special joint meeting held in April and ratification of the May 2023 bills. Can I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, hearing none. The amendment passes 5-0. Okay, next, let's go on to approval and adoption of resolution number 2023-12 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, authorizing the assessment and ordering the levy for the Kensington Park Assessment District for fiscal year 2023-24 pursuant to the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. Any comments? Questions from the board? Any comments from the public or questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
I move to approve and adopt resolution number 2023-12 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, authorizing the assessment and ordering the levy for the Kensington Park Assessment District for fiscal year 2023-24 pursuant to the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes 5-0. Next, we have approving and adopting resolution number 2023-13 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, affirming the establishment of the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2023-24. Any comments, questions? I'm going to the
Would just clarify that that is $5,591,161.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the public? David, did you want to say anything? You, okay. Okay, move.
I'll make a motion
Thank you.
that the board adopt resolution number 2023-13, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, affirming the establishment of the appropriations limit for fiscal year 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Next, we have approval and adoption resolution number 2023-14 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, authorizing the adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2024. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Yes, Delk, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Madam President, A. Stevens Dill. Under Parks, the fiscal year 24 budget has $50,000 in community center revenue and $1,000 for tennis court revenue. What about the $29,000 base charge to KCC and the additional $30,000 for park facilities maintenance, MMR? Where does that show up in the budget?
I was asked that question before, and I believe that money is in the revenue stream of the general fund, but I would need to double check. And I also told, I believe the president of the KCC, we would put an asterisk on the budget when it's produced, showing the breakdown of that money, both for its designated purposes and where it came, where it's showing in the line item.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the public? I see none.
I'd just like to ask Linnell to, Delk is not muted, and there are participants who spoke prior. You need to remove their ability to speak. There's a different button to press.
Yeah, they're still showing up as panelists.
It's not that they're panelists, it's that they have been given permission to speak so that if they unmute themselves at any time, they can. If you remove their permission to speak, they disappear from that screen.
Mhm.
Anyway, just a comment.
Yeah, they can unmute themselves, Linnell. So you have to, anyway, Director Goff.
Apologies for not asking this sooner, but I just needed a little bit of clarification under the operations and administrative expenses for the waste management. So at the last page, just a question about why the program admin costs would go up so substantially.
I look back and I believe it was in the 21 fiscal year. There was the proper use of allocation of those funds for administrative purposes. And it doesn't appear that was done in 22, but we're back to using allocation numbers for that.
Thanks, Linnell. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, David, did you? No, okay. And otherwise, do I hear a motion?
I move that we approve and adopt resolution number 2024 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, authorizing the adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2024.
I'll just make a correction to that resolution number. It is 2023-14.
Thank you.
May I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have approval and adoption of resolution number 2023-15 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District approving changes and additions to the Kensington Police Protection Community Services District fee schedule effective July 1, 2024. Is that correct? 2024?
Yeah, we want to make it effective in this coming fiscal year. And the police chief spent a good amount of time searching fees. There's been a very limited even effort to take charges for police fees because of our limited ability on how we take money. And with the credit card now, we feel that we have a lot more freedom in being able to take money on potential fees that sometimes those people aren't, you don't want to accept their checks, to be quite blunt. So with that, we decided to not only add the fees for police services, but also we decided to double check our fees for our park and rec, and we made some little minor adjustments. One of them is, for example, an additional fee when alcohol is desired for a private function that's renting this. There's a number of there's administrative work specific to the alcohol issue, so we added that. And then we added a few other little things on administrative fees, which most districts have. And while we're in the modular on San Pablo, I don't see that being an issue. But when the day comes that we are back in this community with an office, we may have individuals that want faxes and copies, and that service, to me, that's a service that we could provide.
I want to make sure that this new fee schedule would go into place next July, not this coming July.
No, in a few weeks.
So that shouldn't say July 1, 2023 on the agenda, at least it says.
Oh, maybe that was a typo.
Okay, I have a typo then. Stand corrected. Any questions or comments? Director Hasai.
I have let's see. I have a question. So on the police fee, and you may not know this. So it says report copy. So if I have a burglary, I get a report. I get one report. And then if my insurance company wants a report, then if I have to provide it, that's the copy that I would be charged for. If the insurance company contacts the police department directly, I don't know what happens. But if I want additional, I get one copy free as a victim, I hope. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. On the community center things, two questions. One, the charge for processing alcohol requests. One reason I believe we didn't charge it is that we didn't issue the permit. I remember having to go somewhere to actually get a permit once when we rented the community center. So are we now handling the permit itself?
No, but we still, there's two different types of processes with alcohol. One is if they're going to resell it. It's still on them to get the permit from ABC, but we still have to sign off on paperwork.
Okay.
The second is if it's just part of a function here that they're serving it, they have to provide additional paperwork, which Rosa needs to confirm and check.
Got it.
And there's also, when alcohol's involved, there's the potential for some other things to happen. So we're just trying to cover ourselves.
I got it. And then I don't believe it's here, and I don't believe it has to be here, but we did create a nonprofit rate for the community center and for these uses. Now, it's not widely advertised on the website because very few, there are a certain number of nonprofits. I mean, I don't know that those fees are represented here, but I don't know that they have to be, especially if there's not a change to them. But I don't quite see that here. Remember that, Ann, when we did the I don't know if you remember that, but we have a resident and non-resident fee, and then we have a nonprofit fee, I believe. Anyway,
We're not trying to change
right.
that part of the arrangement. I'd hate to lose the ability to start charging these fees.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I think though that
I don't have a problem still incorporating my power of authority for nonprofits.
right. I mean, it is delineated. It was passed by a previous board, and they exist. They're just not here. And it's important that you know about them.
Yeah. And if it's not being changed based on the
Correct.
resolution.
Got
So I
it.
think we're fine.
Right. And then my last question is, do the cost of copies apply to Public Record Act requests? And if something is transmitted electronically, is that a cost per page?
No.
Thank you very much.
And David, sorry to be a stickler, but on the resolution that's posted on the website, the actual resolution does say 2024. So that needs to be changed.
Yep. So we're going to need to change that before it's approved. Or, I mean, we're going to change it before it's finalized.
Yep.
So we do that as part of the motion.
Great.
Um,
Thank you, Director Goff. She found it. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the fee schedule? Otherwise, turn to the public. Any questions from the public on this? Delk. Okay. Delk, you can unmute yourself.
Stephen Still. Concerning the park facility rate, it would be clearer by adding per hour to each of the resident rates as done for the non-resident rates. Does entire CC mean the main hall, room 1 and room 2, but not, sorry, room 1 and 3, but not 2. Kitchen access is additional with a rate independent of the time used, where all others are per hour. Is that intended? It's interesting to me that the non-resident rate for the entire community center is about 30% more than the resident rate. But the difference for the individual rooms varies from anywhere from about 40% to 60% more. And there is no difference in resident and non-resident rates for anything else. I assume there is a reason for this. Are chairs available with or without fees? The tennis court reservation fees are not listed, but sorry, something is wrong with what I've got written here. But anyway, your tennis court fees for residents and non-residents should be listed on this. I assume that the rate schedule will be posted on the district website, so it should be as comprehensive and clear as possible to minimize staff time in responding to inquiries. Thank you.
Thank you. David, I think it'd be an easy amendment to add per hour in the resident rate column.
Actually, there's a reason why it is done the way it is.
Okay.
If you see, it's not clear in this, it's not quite clear, but the entire, the 4-hour minimums and the 2-hour minimums, I believe are, yeah, I do believe she's right that it's per hour and there are minimums, but the minimums are for everybody. And then the per hour, she's right, it should probably be per hour.
Sorry. So what is the amendment? I'm sorry that you're.
Well, is this sheet part of the resolution?
Yes.
So then, so that would be another part of the amendment to add per hour
Yeah, that's what.
after each one.
Right.
and
That's what
then-
I was saying. So, but is there something else?
Well, the tennis court fees are not on here. We know that they are $5 for residents and $7 for non-residents for an hour, I believe, per reservation.
Make a recommendation. This is getting too confusing, so if I would ask the directors that have some comments to mark them so that we can do this right and bring it back to the board next month.
One of my questions is that my understanding was that these were new fees or changes, but these are not all of these are changes.
Correct.
So they should-
We weren't trying to we might have upped them like $5 or something to cover credit card costs, but we weren't really interested in making big changes to any of the recreational facility rentals. What we were mainly focused on was trying to start using the police ability to charge police fees.
Well, so then again, I don't know that we have to bring it back. If, for example, the tennis courts, they're not changing. So what you're saying is all of these fees here represent changes.
At this point in time, I'm
You're
not
not
even
sure. Okay, then maybe we'll have to bring it back.
Okay. So, well, and we can, when we vote on it in July, David, can the fee rate schedule be retroactive? Or would it be starting?
We'll make it for August.
Yeah.
1st.
Yeah.
Do you need a resolution to change the fees for all the, yeah, okay. Yeah, make it for August 1st and
Okay. Next, so we'll table that for the next board meeting. Next is approval and adoption of resolution number 2023-16 of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, approving additions to the Kensington Police Protection Community Services District Employee Policy Manual, adding vacation and sick time for non-sworn regular employees of the district. David, do you want to give any context on this?
Yeah, I feel very strongly that while we may not be able to afford health benefits and retirement benefits to our administrative staff, that the least we can do is encourage them to be off when they're sick and be paid if they have that time, and to take vacations and get rest and relaxation. So that's why we've presented this. It's not out of the ordinary, and it's very controlled because the purpose is for them to use that time, not to bank it and then end up having the district pay a huge check at the end of, 10 years of service. So I tried to be very conservative, but at the same time, give the employees something. I've already run into a couple situations where some employees have taken time off and basically don't pay.
Any questions from the board or comments?
I think this is appropriate. I think David is exactly correct. We should allow our employees some time off for sick leave, but you don't want employees coming in when they are sick because they feel they have to, and they don't want to lose pay as a result of it. And the same is true on vacation, and it's capped, and we're not paying for a payout on sick leave. So I think it's appropriate to move forward with something like this.
Director Asai?
My question is about how much folks can carry over. And so what's the maximum? I see that they stop accruing when they reach 96 hours, but there are places that have policies that you can only carry over 10 per year, for example. So is there anything in the policy about how much they can accumulate and carry over?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you cap at an amount, so let's say someone doesn't use anything for a year and is at 96, they stop accruing. But that amount stays on the books through their tenure until it drops. Then they would start accruing again. I think that accomplishes it's not a carryover or lose it. It's just a stop accruing process.
Okay. So that encourages people not to get to that cap because then they're going to stop accruing.
Yeah. And some people can say, oh, I have 96 hours and I'm going to call in sick. But I have found that not to typically be the case.
Well, no, I'm more concerned about vacation payout. So the most we would pay somebody out would be 96 hours.
Oh, yeah. That was my concern, and that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, can I have a motion? Oh, excuse me. Any public comment on this item? I see no hands. So can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that the Kensington Board approve and adopt resolution number 2023-16, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District approving additions to the Kensington Police Protection Community Services District Employee Policy Manual, adding vacation and sick time for non-sworn regular employees of the district.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0.
Realize that it's written here as the employee policy manual, and it's the district's policy and procedure manual. So I will remake the motion. Resolution number 2023-16, approving of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District Board, approving additions to the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District Policy and Procedure Manual, adding vacation and sick time for non-sworn regular employees of the district.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have approval to move forward in requesting proposals from vendors and performing the financial analysis for KPPCSD and KFPD as required by LAFCO in the consolidation process. David, I think you wanted to make some comments.
Yes, as you recall, we approved a resolution the last meeting to move forward on a financial analysis and also seek out the fire board as a partner in this effort. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to start the process, and I would urge us to ask the general manager to draft a request for proposal to move forward. And then secondly, I believe that we should then communicate, send a letter to the fire board requesting their participation and ask them to review the draft and provide comments to us. And if they're in agreement with what we're proposing, then we move forward in a partnership to seek a financial analysis of both districts independently, and then a analysis of a consolidated district, consistent with the services that are provided by both districts.
I have a question about what exactly we are requesting. So if the way it's written, it's an analysis of both our district and the fire board district.
It would initially be,
Fire
it would be two parts. It would be an analysis of our district and then a separate analysis of the fire board district. And then secondly, it would be an analysis if the two districts were consolidated. And that analysis should have a projection out for a number of years. My recommendation would be a 5-year projection on both the two districts independently and also as a consolidated district.
Am I correct that the fire board has not yet put a vote around the issue of reorganization? I like to try to use the word reorganization now. On their agenda at this time, they have not yet taken action on this.
It was only brought up at the last fire board meeting by board member Daniel Levine to have a similar resolution, similar to ours, and moving forward in a partnership to look at consolidation. So that has not been brought to their board yet. And based on the last fire board meeting, it's possible it could be brought in the June meeting, but what I understood, more likely in the July meeting.
And my biggest concern is that it's been made pretty clear to us that if the fire board does not come along as a partner, that LAFCO will not approve it. There'll be a much more contentious process. And so for us to take on this proposal to do an analysis of both districts and the joint district on our own without any yet buy-in or financial assistance from the fire board is concerning. And in particular, I don't know how we would ever be able to do a really good analysis without their participation of their district. So I'm, I guess, a little concerned that we're doing this on our own without their affirmative vote yet, the way we've affirmed that we are proceeding toward reorganization, and that, you know, I'm a little worried about putting the cart before the horse, especially if they are not going to, you know, come along.
Well, the whole intent, go ahead, David, if you'd like to.
Well, based on some conversations I've had in regard to what you're saying, I have a couple of comments. One is, first of all, at the joint hearing, there was a lot of talking in circles because we don't have answers to questions specific about the finances of both districts and bringing them together. So my belief is it's going to be money well spent into the future to answer the question, is it possible financially for both these? Does it make sense financially for both these districts to do it? Once that answer is put on paper, you may get a change of mind of not only some of the fire district board members, but you may also get comments from, call it pressure, call it whatever you want, from the public or the residents of Kensington, again, emphasizing the importance of consolidation. Yes, we would hope that the fire district board would look at the RFP if we get it approved, and we would hope that eventually they would put it on the agenda and approve supporting it financially. But with all that said, I think it's important for us, KPPCSD, to move forward so that this either stays on the table and moves forward or gets taken off the table for good reason, if there is one, and we have an answer to our question.
Yeah, and I want to respond to your comments also. I want to be really clear what we're asking and what we're actually voting right now. And what I understand we're doing is we're just beginning the process of hiring a professional to do this financial analysis. We're just drafting the RFP to hire a vendor to do the analysis required by LAFCO. And we will share the RFP with the fire board. My hope is that they will provide us with input. I think even if they don't provide a financial contribution, I think $50,000 or whatever it's worth is worth it for the benefit of having a unified government structure. And if we have to foot the bill, then so be it. But I think we got to keep this issue moving forward, and we need that. We need facts.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not assuming that I have any authority when the RFPs come back. It will be brought back to the board for approval.
And is the 50,000 figure that you just mentioned kind of what we are hearing as a ballpark?
Just to
Upper limit.
just to expand upon that, I've contacted some individuals, actually that Luann recommended. One of them came back with a very thorough email that we're using that number. Another one came back with a rather scattered information that was a much lower number. And that's why we felt that we now have probably 4 or 5 viable vendors we could go out to and get a very competitive bid.
Yeah. Sorry, President Aquino, may I? Yes. And yeah, I would just like to reiterate the importance of just getting answers to these questions and to sort of stop this circular loop and misperception. I mean, we've learned new things about reorganization for one, and there's understandably some nervousness and confusion around taking a bold new direction. But this is not that vote today, and we just need the answers. And I guess because the information that we're seeking is all publicly available, we should be able to, should they, again, I would also hope they would partner with us and work together with us on it. But should they not want to participate, that information is publicly available and we should be able to get a thorough analysis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let me just say, we're just at the beginning of the stage to start out with. We want to draft an RFP that everybody is comfortable with, and then we want to see if the fire board is willing to participate, and we want them to review, if they are, review that draft RFP, and then we can move forward with publishing it and putting it out for vendors. So we're just at an initial stage. What we want to do is first draft the RFP and then move forward.
Duggan.
Whoops. I think it's a great investment for Kensington, for the KPPCSD to go forward with this, whether this board does it alone or with the fire board.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, David, for doing some of this research, and both Davids. Let's see, any questions from the public? I see a hand from Gail. Gail, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, thank you. Yeah, so again, I just want to support the effort that you are embarking on with looking into the issue of consolidation, reorganization, or unification, as now we have 3 terms to call it. And again, as many of you have suggested and mentioned, just to be clear, maybe to give your general manager direction to, before the RFP is submitted out to the vendors, that he work with Mary Moraga to have the fire district's general manager review the RFP, and how she determines how she's going to handle that, with whether she goes to her board or not is, obviously up to her. But, I think having the 2 general managers cooperating on this would be very helpful. And then hopefully the fire board, as the board, comes along with your board to cost share on the RFP. That would be certainly what the KPOA is going to be recommending and suggesting to both boards. We really just want to see cooperation from the beginning of this process all the way through to the end. And so I hope that you can do whatever you can do on that front to move that forward. But thank you again for putting this on your agenda.
Thank you, Gail. Any other, Director Duggan?
And the community owes a debt of gratitude to Gail Feldman for putting this on the community's radar a long time ago. Thank you, Gail.
Any other questions or comments from the public? I don't see any hands, so can I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I'll move that we direct the general manager to draft a request for proposal and bring that draft back to the board for review and approval, and then subsequently request the fire board to participate in its review and partner with us in moving forward with the RFP.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have approval of amendment number 1, an amendment of the contract between KPPCSD owner and Fernando Herrera, contractor, to increase his monthly maintenance fees at the park site by $500 per month.
Can I just note that there are some folks listed as panelists that I don't recognize, initials MP, KJT, and Joseph, and I don't know where they came from. I don't recognize them, and they are showing up as panelists on my, oh shoot, did I? Or maybe they're attendees. Sorry, they're on the attendee list. Apologize.
I was approached, I think about 30 days ago by Fernando. I think most of you are aware that he's been doing a great job, not only in regular maintenance of our parks, but he'll take phone calls at any time of the night from the police. When we had all the storms going on, he was everywhere trying to assist. He was assisting in protecting dangerous situations and also keeping things open. He approached me and asked for a $500 a month. He actually asked for a $700 a month, and I said that's too much. So he asked for $5, and I said, yeah, I think that's reasonable considering it's been a few years and considering inflation and all. But recently, we had something happen that I thought could be a good thing for the district, and that is Sylvia and I saw him right here at the park yesterday. So we started asking him more about what would happen if we bought electric equipment, which would greatly reduce noise and also pollution. And what kind of discount could you give us if we did provide our own equipment for him to and his people to do all the work? And his answer was, I'd take the 500 and reduce it by 200. So in effect, it would be a net increase of 300 a month. And I apologize for an email I wrote earlier that wasn't very clear on that, but that's what it comes down to. So what I'm now asking the board is if there needs to be some discussion to see if we have consensus on to purchase the park equipment or give me the authority to have that purchased, and then approve the amended contract with it being 300 instead of 500. So the amendment would increase his monthly fee rather than $27.75. It would be $25.75 if I did my math right.
But how much would it cost to buy this equipment?
I think I estimated around $8,000. That does not include a shed that we would probably find that we would need to store at least the lawnmower in. But to me, the shed could be used potentially for other storage issues as well down the road. So your quick math is theoretically you're going to save $2,000 a year by not paying him $500 an increase instead of and a $300 increase. So is the equipment going to last X amount of years to make this worthwhile? But I think it's more than that. I think it's also like yesterday when he was mowing, there's people in the park. It's noisy. You can't talk over it. So there's those considerations as well. But this is for the board to take into consideration.
And is that 8,000 included in the budget?
Well, the answer is no, it's not included in the fiscal year 24 budget, but I still have 2 weeks to get something this year.
Director Hassai.
I'll just expand a little bit. This came about actually due to a neighbor who has, well, two things. Many folks in Kensington are very involved in the state level initiative to ban gas powered like outdoor equipment. And so there are plenty of jurisdictions that are doing that. And a neighbor came to me about that. And I actually asked Fernando, I actually happened to see him getting coffee one day on Stockton Street. And I asked him, what do you think about this? Like, is this possible? How does this work? And he said, oh yeah, it's very possible. And that was back in, I don't know, maybe February, March. And then as the budget was being developed, I did mention it to David. And then it was happened to be happenstance that we both saw him here yesterday. And he also pointed out that, yes, he had to stop. My neighbor told me that anytime that she's at the park and he has to come out and do anything, she has to leave because her asthma and her kid's asthma is so bad. And he was talking about having to like leave people on the lawn and move. And like, he actually came back yesterday because he had stopped again another day doing stuff because there were people out. And then yesterday he came back and again, he had to kind of alter his schedule because there were people using the lawn. And so it just all kind of was very, serendipitous. And I really do think that for both I think our community would really appreciate it, both from the noise and especially the kind of emissions and the pollution and all that. So I'm really in favor of it. I thought it was great that Fernando was willing to deal with us. And he said that buying the equipment right now, I said, well, when's the best time to buy this? Because, when is the cheapest? He's like, right now. So it turned out that David mentioned he had money in the budget. So I would really encourage folks to be in favor of it.
Director Goff.
So I think totally support all of it. It all sounds great, especially because, Fernando is, an incredible worker. He has such expertise. There's no one harder working, and he's so reasonable in what he asks for. So if he asks for it, he must have a very valid reason for wanting it. And of course, I think in our community, people do tend to want to try to be environmentally responsible and all of the reasons. My one concern is the storage shed. One, that's a cost. Two, I don't love the idea of putting it next to the annex. I think things like that need to be not visible. And if there's a place we can find to put it in a way that's,
I'm sure there is.
yes. That would be my one concern.
Fernando just threw that out, but the concern is he has to be able to drive it's a small mower. It's not really huge, but it is a drive on. He has to be able to kind of get it wherever it has to go. And also it's very good for him. He's not going to be breathing that stuff, which he didn't even talk about, but is a great plus.
Any other question, Director Duggan?
How much would the storage shed cost?
I did a quick search. Probably around $2,000 to $3,000 to buy one of those ready-made ones.
2,200.
Yes.
Okay.
I would be concerned about a storage shed sitting out there, people breaking into it. These types of devices are probably going to be something that somebody wants. And I would be very concerned about that.
They were breaking into the storage shed at the school.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mentioned that to him as well. So and I was concerned about that as well, that it has to be pretty secure and potentially out of the way. So I think that is a concern. I think if we approve it, I think maybe you come back with us and tell us what the plan is. I mean, if it can be worked out, and that shed is going to have to kind of be something you would discuss with us anyway, I think, given the sensitivities around the park and how it looks and where things go.
Director Duggan.
If we can use the annex, which is currently not being used at all, if we could widen the doorway, I think that would be a lot more secure than a shed. Partly because, it wouldn't be adding a brand new facility that, thieves are going to be like, oh, that's where all the equipment is.
Let's let David do some
Yeah.
research and come
Yeah.
back to us, but I think we're ready to approve this, it sounds. But first, let's see if there's any questions from the public. I see somebody, KJT. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is actually Sylvia Ellsbury. I've been barred from the meeting. After my previous comments, I was actually barred from the meeting. So I'm now on one of my kids' phones, and I'm coming in to say that I agree with Cass, that the annex is not fit for much besides storing equipment of this nature. And I believe that that would be the easiest and probably cheapest way to go about storing this equipment, which I support. And please sort out the Zoom issues, because this is quite frustrating that I was limited. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but who was like barred from reach. I tried different browsers, etc. Anyway, agree, put it in the annex. Great idea. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, and sorry you had technical difficulties. I don't, for sure, it was not intentional. I have no idea what happened. So we'll look into it. Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve amendment number 1 with the following changes. I will read the amendment: to contract between Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District and Fernando Herrera. The amendment would be as printed for property management. It says 2023. I think that assumes it's 2023 to 2024 fiscal year. I don't quite know, but in any case, let me see. Well, I don't see any change to make to the actual amendment. I see changes to make to the Exhibit A, which would be a flat rate of $2,575 per month. So the amendment changes the monthly fee and the flat rate from $2,000 to $2,575. Does that provide the proper notice for?
I think we need to add a paragraph in there saying that we will supply.
So an additional amendment would be to also say that the KPPCSD would supply the following electric equipment, which would be a small ride-on mower, hedge clippers, a weed whacker, and a leaf blower. Those were the items that we had to supply.
Did you see an edger?
I said hedge clipper.
Okay.
Oh, edger. No, weed whacker. Do you need me to read that again? All right, it's on tape. So
What's the rate again?
$2,575. And that's an increase of $300 per month.
Can I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. We're so close. Let's move forward. I want to get to my babies. Director Duggan.
Unfortunately, I need a bio break. How about 2 minutes, guys?
Okay, we're
2 minute
taking a 2-minute bio break. We'll be right back.
Yeah, yeah.
Betty?
You discovering new places and new routines with your move.
Wildcat Canyon for one.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
I haven't,
Oh, that's,
have you been to that?
what do you mean staging area?
It's
I mean,
like
I've
at the
been-
end of our.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And you can take, I have.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, yes.
And so. just
Oh,
really
yeah.
like,
And you see the cows. Yeah, it's, oh, yeah, it's really
It
nice.
was then, I then discovered this thing, I told him, it was right, like our front yard, basically.
Yeah.
that You could have the dogs out. Anyway, so
Yeah.
it makes you explore everything again.
Right.
So no, it's really worked out. Looking good when I was looking for rental.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, places you
Have a presentation and discussion of the park replanting project from Director Duggan. This is from the ad hoc committee comprised of Director Duggan and Director Goff. Thank you both for your hard work on this. Take it away, Director Duggan.
And Linnell, if you can put the report up for those who want to read along from home. I am going to try to make this brief. It's getting late. The entire report is posted online. So I'm going to skim over a lot of parts, okay? So our committee of Director Goff and I was tasked with providing a thoughtful approach to future replantings and care of Kensington Park. To pursue this goal, we met with multiple community members, Hilltop Elementary School parents from the PTA and the Kensington Education Fund, KCC Recreation Director Jenny Parks, Fire Chief Eric Sailors, Police Sergeant Brian Landy, horticulturist Katya de Niergaard, retired landscape architect Lisa Corona, representatives from Sagorite Land Trust, community members from Good Guest Kensington, native plant specialist Kirk Fry, Kensington Park landscaper Fernando Herrera, KPPCSD Park Administrator Rosa Ruiz, Timothy Cole of Blake Gardens, landscape architect Patricia Akinaga of Studio MLA, landscape architect Anushe Rahim of Dune High, and Nathan Bickert from Urban Tilth. We wish to thank them all for their input. In speaking with community members, several common themes emerged. At least as many new trees should be planted as were recently removed. Maintaining big open spaces for kids to play and people to exercise or picnic in nature are key. The park should be a sustainable landscape with drought tolerant and fire-wise plantings that provides year-round beauty and shade in the warmer months. Many suggested increasing the number of trees around the open lawn where children play and dogs romp, and choosing trees with beautiful blossoms in spring or fall color in autumn. Most expressed an interest in returning to native trees such as coast live oaks and native plants. Many people expressed an interest in taking advantage of the beautiful enhanced view where the Monterey Pines were moved on Island Ave, with new seating there to provide a place for quiet rest, quiet enjoyment and reflection. Jumping ahead to feedback from experts, Fire Chief Sailor suggested that native trees and plants are a safer choice. Tall conifers, especially Monterey pines, tend to shed large limbs and can explode if they catch fire. It's not advisable to have tall or fire-prone trees near buildings. Ladder fuels at the base of trees and around structures should be removed. Piles of dead limbs, debris, or mulch should not be allowed to accumulate. Lastly, Chief Sailors recommended that CAL FIRE and FEMA and other organizations might have some grants for us. And General Manager David Aranda has been pursuing such. Police Chief Brian Landy, Police Sergeant Brian Landy told us that historically Kensington Park has been a low crime area. Visibility is important to adequately patrol the area, so dense bushes near seating stairs or play areas should be avoided. And he saw no issues with our proposed projects. KCC Recreation Director Jenny Parks requested the addition of shade trees at several edges of the grass lawn to shade children and staff when using the grass lawn for activities. She also expressed interest in the creation of a community garden near the KSEP building for gardening classes. Like others we met with, the horticulturist advised that we plant California natives and also California wildflowers. We should remove dangerous and poisonous plants and invasive species like Scotch broom. Plants can be chosen which will create or improve habitats for our wildlife and birds. Multiple landscape architects provided great ideas. We have incorporated some of these ideas in our plans, but given that the design fees for these professionals are high, in the tens of thousands of dollars or more, and the district's currently available funds are limited, we do not recommend hiring a landscape architect firm for phase 1 of replanting and repair. As you will hear below, our recommended plan is straightforward and can be implemented by our district landscape team without issue or unnecessary expense. Should the district later receive an influx of grant or other money, we can revisit the idea of hiring a landscape firm then. We also met with Ohlone tribal representatives who similarly suggested a return to native grasses, plants, and trees. Terracing could help with runoff and land erosion. They encouraged repurposing waste materials such as the wood from the cut trees for seating areas, retaining walls, or fencing needed in the park. They and several other experts discussed how to resolve drainage issues at the base of the hillside near the large grass lawn. A swale was repeatedly mentioned as a good way to take advantage of natural surface water and create an attractive feature using large rocks and water-loving plants. Now we come to our committee's recommendations. To prioritize the most urgent landscape needs while keeping costs to a minimum, we recommend the following phased approach to replanting in the park. Our recommendations strive to create a balance between aesthetics, fire safety, climate challenges, a healthy ecology, and affordability. They reflect the priorities expressed by the community as well as the expert feedback we received. So, recommended projects for fiscal year 2023-24. Tree plantings. Plant approximately 8 new trees, which could include coast live oak trees plus buckeye, maple, perhaps some others, to north and south of suggested viewpoint seating area below Highland Boulevard. Plant 2 or 3 trees or shade near the edges of the grass lawn area, which could include redbud, dogwood, beautiful blossoms. Plant 2 coast live oaks next to the road near the tot lot to retain the hillside, which is eroding. Plant 1 or 2 western dogwoods to replace dead fruit trees near the library. And of course, these require new irrigation, mulch, staking, and protective wire fencing. Secondly, viewpoint seating area below Highland Boulevard. Create a 20 to 25 foot platform of base rock and decomposed granite. And this area will have 2 small carve out beds for native plantings and mulch, and approximately 9 to 11 plants each in each side, and add 2 benches, possibly made of wood that we have cut down. Possibly not, though. There are more options in the report. Please read it. Upgrading of the path. The long park path from the fire road to KSEP building needs new wood, base rock, and decomposed granite. Number 4, slope restoration on the eastern slope and slope next to the annex building. This would require roping off the area at the top of the stairs where the kids have created a path and where the water runs down. They would compost, amend the soil, sow some native wildflower seeds, and restore that slope. Number 5, swale. Create a swale using large round rocks at the wet area at the base of the slope near the grass lawn. Add 6 new water-loving native plants, shrubs, and possibly a dogwood tree near the swale. In the area uphill from the library along the road, there's old concrete and wood that needs to be removed. They would add mulch, remove 2 dead or dying fruit trees, and that's where they would plant the 2 new western dogwoods. 7, in the oak tree with exposed roots by the tot lot play structure, they would add netting to the base of the tree by the roots, add compost and mulch, and plant 3 to 5 oak compatible native shrubs and rope it off until the shrubs are established. So that's all of phase 1. We do not know if we can afford all of these items. The budget currently has about 80,000. We do want input from all of you as to which items to choose, which items to prioritize over others. Anything that does not fit in phase 1 moves down to phase 2. Supplier and contractor suggestions, you can read those on the report. Phase 2, future park project suggestions. KCC Community Garden. We recommend that the KCC propose a design plan to the KPPCSD for consideration. The board could cover the cost to install the garden infrastructure, including deer fence planters and drip irrigation. The KCC could install soil plantings, signage, or any additional features. Volunteer park cleanups or projects. Coordinate with community and local groups about regular volunteer park cleanups or projects that could include Hilltop, KCC, Scouts, and other community groups. Concrete or stone retraining structure at the viewpoint designed by a landscape architect. Descriptive signage or plaques at the viewpoint and or to identify native plantings, possibly a tiled labyrinth at the viewpoint. Additional plantings throughout the park. Additional seating areas made using wood from the trees that were cut, especially by walking paths by redwoods behind community center and library. Consider terracing the eastern slope below the viewpoint and adding native shrubs to help retain the land. Consider adding either a pollinator area or Miyawaki forest on the open area south of the library to help retain the hillside and add greenery. There are a bunch more flagged maintenance concerns. I'll let you read those on your own if you want to. And general park funding possibilities. Grants. Consider applying for CAL FIRE and other grants for routine park maintenance or special projects, including fire mitigation. Developing a community facilities district. This mechanism will be explored for offering the district greater flexibility to use the money it has and receives in the future. Community fundraising, considering seeking donations from local K groups, residents, and nonprofits. And revenue generation through enterprise. This could be done here as is done in Presidio through food and beverage sales. Sarah, would you like to contribute anything?
Thanks, Cass. Yeah, obviously there's a lot in here. We spent a lot of time meeting with members of the community and experts, and wanted to really share as much as we could with what we learned. So that's why there's a lot in here. I will say that, the numbers, are still coming in. It's all shockingly expensive, as everything is these days. But I think that what we've proposed, at least most of what's proposed in phase one, I would hope is very doable. Essentially, it's planting trees, and I believe the repair of the path is actually critical to the landscape, because that path is in such poor condition, the landscape on that slope is being scarred by people creating trails and walking down it, and then the water runs, and then it would be very difficult to rehabilitate that nature there with just sort of the natural grasses and a very kind of low maintenance approach to really greening up. Because I think our primary concern with the loss of the Monterey Pines is that area will remain a blight for a long time unless we can do something that's very straightforward, that can address these things now. And getting rid of those stumps, creating an area that now capitalizes on this amazing view that we have now, with a very basic platform, which is essentially an extension of the path. So it's not anything with any big retaining structure. It's basically a level decomposed granite platform with some plantings around it, because the view is so spectacular. And with the addition of new trees, it will be beautiful and is not a complicated thing. So while we both understand the purview of this committee really wasn't supposed to involve a specific landscape plan or specific planting recommendations, it became so abundantly clear after all of the meetings that the same suggestions kept emerging because they make sense. And it seems to be what the community wants, and we don't have to pay a landscape firm, and we don't need to for something this straightforward. And so I think we should prioritize the tree plantings and the path, and putting that new seating at the viewpoint so people can enjoy the view, and cleaning up where we can. And that's personally what I would like to see us really consider. But yeah.
Oh, go ahead, David. I just wanted to say that I do appreciate the work. I am a little taken aback because my understanding was it was just going to be a discussion of the area where the trees had left. And so I think we need to keep what I would suggest. I also don't agree that we don't need a landscape architect. As someone who's just worked on a very small project in my own home, I don't think it's wise for us to proceed without a landscape architect. I really don't. And it's that we could get someone to do it pro bono, but I think that this document should be given to a landscape architect, I think, with the priority being the area where the trees were taken down and that path. I mean, a lot of these suggestions in phase one had nothing to do with that area, things around the library or things around there are things we want to do, but this is, as you said, the numbers are going to be high. And
can I just interject really quickly about the committee was to look at the care and replanting of the whole park. I mean, it was looking at the whole park. It was in response to the loss of the Monterey Pines, but it wasn't limited to that area in the committee document.
That wasn't my understanding, but it's great because I think this is something we've been doing. I mean, we've been doing this constantly for years. We all, we're all concerned about these as things we've identified ourselves before at the previous boards. So that's all great. I would say the best thing we could do is probably turn this over to staff, to David, with the priority being the area that was the big tree area, because budget's going to determine a lot of how fast we can move and what we can do. But I am not comfortable not having a landscape architect as be part of these plans. I really am not. I think for liability issues, I think there are long-term issues that we have to look at, and laying base rock and all that stuff, they need to work from a plan. That's what I think happens.
So can I, interject that, so FJ&I Engineering, who is the contractor that worked on Nielsen Park and does some other work for the district, who laid that, who did those retaining structures and also did, they've actually done work in Presidio, the new tunnel tops. So they're a professional team approved by the district. They can and are qualified to draw those plans for those aspects, for the platform and for the path. And then Fernando, as a professional landscaper with his team, who also does our park at both parks, can plant the trees in a way that they'll thrive and live and get the irrigation to them. So they can do all that. So the value of the landscape architect is to recommend specific plantings and offer a design expertise, which is amazing and could be really creative and spectacular. But this is not that. This is straightforward, and there would be no, since we're not engaging on other structures or novel plantings, there would be we could, if we're just focused on the area by the Monterey Pines, it's just 8 trees and a path and an extended path.
It's helpful to hear you say that there's going to be a plan, that it's not a landscape architect, it's this engineering firm.
Of course, it's the work is done by professionals who are district approved and have done all this work before.
I also would just caution around the natives, because I'm a big fan of natives. Who isn't? But I have been talking to landscape architects for just other reasons, and some of them caution about the fact that the climate's changing. Even our natives are stressed and not doing well, and so some of them are recommending plants that might be more like Australia or things like that. So it's a bit of a battle, even in the kind of botanical community, about the primacy of natives and then looking ahead. So I don't think this is the board should not be getting into too much detail here. I think we need to turn it over to staff. I think the priority should be the area with the view, along with the plan, with the plans that the engineering firm does. I mean, Fernando, of course, does a great job. It wouldn't hurt if, Lisa might be willing to look at them.
She was out, we met with her and got feedback from all of them, and we're just taking their suggestions.
I think we should kind of proceed that way, because there's a lot in here. This is a multi-year plan, really, honestly. And I think we need to start putting it into the budget. We need to start, laying this out.
No, that's all clear. And at least clear to me that this was not a big master plan. And I'm fully supportive of at least doing some of the planting on the hill and stabilizing that area. I think that's critical. And I didn't realize about the path. So thank you for educating me. I think we're really in the beginning stages. This is just information collection. I think it's fantastic what you guys have done. And I think it's super interesting that all of these experts have given similar recommendations. So there's something there that provides legitimacy to all of this. And so I would like staff to take the phase 1 ideas and start to really put pen to paper on the numbers, and let's see what's actually possible. If we do, and among that, I would really prioritize the trees, the tree replanting. So, but again, I can't really make any decisions or vote on anything until I know numbers. So.
Yeah, I agree that I think one, we need to have a prioritization of the projects and then costing them out. So we have some sense of what the true cost is going to be, and whether we can afford what we support.
I mean, we might need, I don't know who would even not landscape architect might be employed just to take all that stuff, try to help us figure out, how to phase it in and also do some of the costing. I don't know who else could do that, but.
Right, but priorities are important, particularly for stabilization. One question I have is with regard to the Serpentine area. Is there any plan for dealing with that other than to roping it off, I guess, from what I think?
By the basketball,
Well, no,
by the basketball courts.
is
or
it dealt
the
with? Then I'm,
Well, I don't know what people know, but that was roped off for a long time. And I think ultimately we got an opinion that it really wasn't dangerous because it's not, it's really dangerous if you're like pounding on it and
right, if you
breathing.
create a
it.
dust,
So,
situation, inhalation situation, yeah.
yeah, so you keep it.
Point of order. There are two serpentine areas. There's the one by the basketball courts that's kind of, it looks like a climbing wall. It's below the oak tree. There's also another area of serpentine that has been covered by mulch.
Mhm.
It's on the slope, the
Yep.
eastern slope.
I'm very familiar,
the Grass.
very familiar.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that one. I didn't realize there was a second one. Are you saying that the reason they covered that with concrete is because of serpentine rock?
That apparently is part of it. Now, we have some estimates.
That was what I was told. And as you all probably know, it's not holding up well and needs some work, but probably more importantly, it also needs to be, the railing needs to be extended to keep people out of that area from it becoming a climbing hazard.
An interesting fact that I recently learned about Serpentine Rock, it's the state rock of California. I had no idea. That's
Yeah.
cool. Anyway, and apparently it's a fantastic rock. So I think it's, yeah.
If you search our website for the term serpentine rock, you'll see that we've been talking about serpentine
Yeah.
rock for a few years.
So Fernando's put a bunch of mulch over it that gradually is breaking down and he covers it and he feels that's adequate. And anyway, so this, yeah, I agree. Thank you all for this input. This is very preliminary. The idea was to get this out in the community, let people think about it, meditate on it, come back with great suggestions for improving it. Obviously, this is a kind of a wish list and it can be pared down. The numbers, David's already started some of the process of getting a sense of what that would be because the providers that, we're familiar with have provided preliminary estimates. So that again doesn't really require a landscape architect to do that part of it. If we want to get another set of professional eyes and pay them a small fixed fee to just kind of sign off on it, then we could.
No,
But
as long as they're providing that information.
yeah,
it's fine.
but it is ultimately the work is being done, would be done by professionals who know what they're doing.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I wasn't aware of how knowledgeable Fernando is about landscaping. But in a conversation about the trees that I was having with him, I wasn't pointing anything at him. I was just asking a question and he started explaining to me all how you have to mix the soil, how deep the whole kit and caboodle. So personally, I'm very comfortable with his knowledge base on us getting the trees done correctly. Little side note.
Okay, so I think we've got plenty of information to mull over. I really want to thank Director Duggan and Director Goff. Thank you so much. I know you guys put hours and I really also appreciate how you had meetings with the public. That was fantastic, great idea. And I want to thank the public for sharing their knowledge with you all. We've got a lot of wonderful local experts right here. So thank you all for helping. I think this committee might want to coordinate with our general manager to do the necessary follow-up research and we'll keep talking.
Thank you.
Public? Any public comment? I was looking, I don't see any hands, but. Nope. Okay,
Let me just say, I'm impressed by the wealth of information that you've provided.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. Thank you.
all righty. Last item for tonight. Approval of resolution number 2023-17, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District, establishing the annual supplemental special tax for police protection and directing that a signed copy of the resolution be sent to NBS for the placement of the supplemental special tax to be placed on the tax rolls. David.
Big mouthful, basically simply stated, if we want to see the police tax on the tax roll. We approve this resolution, send it to MBS. They send it along with the tax roll information of parcels.
Let me just add, it will add additional money to the budget because the estimate for this tax in the budget is 1%. And we're talking about slightly over 4% CPI on this. Your budget has this particular measure, which is increased every year by the CPI. And you've suggested in the budget of a 1% increase for this special tax. But what you're asking for here is a slightly over 4% increase in this special tax. So,
Right.
So that,
But what you have to also take into consideration is you're not going to get 100% probably of it paid.
well, it's unless people don't pay their property tax.
That's what I'm.
Right, but my point being,
happens.
it's reflective of all the previous years. People have generally paid their property tax, so it's a benefit towards the budget, is my point.
It's conservative. I try to be
I
conservative.
appreciate that, and having reviewed the budget before, I know you are conservative.
Questions?
Thank you. I think we're close to the end of the agenda. And I just want to say, having sat through the whole thing, what a welcome change it has been to see the board pulling together and working for our combined best interests. I know it's been challenging. I know it hasn't always been easy, but on behalf of those who are watching and those who may not have been watching, let me say thank you very much for a job well done.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any other comments from the public? Yes, I see no hands. So can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that move that the board approve resolution number 2023-17, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District establishing the annual supplemental special tax for police protection.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The next regular meeting is scheduled for July 13, 2023, and this meeting is adjourned. It is now 9:09.